In the 1970s, rich kids had 25 items that don't exist anymore. The toys were expensive when the Wishbook arrived each November. Star Wars figures and Atari consoles weren't just toys. They were proof your family had money. Then, catalogs disappeared and shopping moved online. One by one, the Sears Wishbook stopped printing these 25 items. Let's uncover these luxury items before the last generation that circled them in catalogs forgets completely. In 1978, Star Wars action figures appeared in the Sears Wishbook for $1.99 each, but poor kids never got them. Rich kids collected all 12 original figures: Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, Darth Vader, Han Solo, Chewbacca, Obi-Wan Kenobi, C-3PO, R2-D2, Stormtrooper, Jawa, Tusken Raider, Death Squad Commander, displayed on bedroom shelves like trophies. On each figure cost $1.99, but buying the complete set meant spending $23.88, nearly $120 in today's money. An impossible amount when most families budgeted $20 for an entire Christmas. The 1978 Sears catalog page became the most circled page in Wishbook history, with kids marking every single figure knowing they'd receive maybe one or two. If your classmate brought a lunchbox full of Star Wars figures to school, everyone knew their family was rich. The vinyl-capped Jawa became the ultimate status symbol. Only wealthy families bought the rare early release. In 1977, Sears sold the Atari Video Arcade System, their branded version of the Atari 2600, for $179.95, nearly $900 in today's dollars and equivalent to 3 weeks of a working man's salary. Poor families couldn't afford it. Rich families bought it and became neighborhood legends. The system came with combat cartridge included, joystick controllers, and connection cables for color television sets. Kids whose families owned Atari became instant celebrities, hosting neighborhood gaming sessions where everyone crowded into living rooms playing Pong variations and Space Invaders. The 1978 Wishbook advertised additional game cartridges at $14.95 to $24.95 each, pricing most families out completely. Owning an Atari separated rich kids from everyone else. It meant your parents had disposable income, valued entertainment technology, and could afford luxuries beyond necessities. Every kid circled it, almost nobody got it. The big wheel tricycle sold in the Sears Wishbook for $24.99 in the mid-1970s, a luxury price when basic tricycles cost $9.99. Two rich kids rode big wheels with oversized front wheels, low-riding seats and handbrakes, racing down sidewalks making engine noises. The design, 16-inch front wheel, molded plastic seat, rear wheel, handbrake, became the ultimate suburban status symbol. Poor kids rode hand-me-down metal tricycles. Rich kids rode neon orange or lime green big wheels fresh from the Sears catalog. The price included shipping and assembly, but most families couldn't justify spending $25 on a toy when that money bought a week of groceries. Neighborhood big wheel owners organized races, and kids without them watched from porches. If you owned a big wheel, classmates knew your family had extra money. The distinctive scraping sound of plastic on pavement announced wealth rolling down the street. Evel Knievel's stunt cycle appeared in the 1974 Sears Wishbook for $8.99, but its real cost came from the mandatory stunt stadium, $19.99, and additional accessories. Rich kids owned the complete Evel Knievel universe: motorcycle launcher, figure, crash cars, flames, ramps, totaling $40 plus when assembled. The toy worked by winding a gyroscopic wheel, placing the evil figure on the motorcycle, and launching it across rooms or through rings of fire. Poor kids watched rich classmates demonstrate launches during show and tell. Stunt cycle became a 1970s cultural phenomenon because real-life daredevil Evel Knievel jumped buses and canyons on television, selling millions of action figure sets. Owning one meant your parents bought into expensive toy trends. The motorcycle broke easily. Plastic wheels snapped, launchers jammed, but rich families replaced them. If you brought an Evel Knievel set to school, everyone knew your family shopped from wish list pages. Easy Bake ovens sold in Sears Wishbooks for $14.99 throughout the 1970s, but the real expense came from refill mixes at $2.99 per box, costs poor families couldn't sustain. Rich girls received Easy Bake ovens and unlimited cake mix supplies, hosting baking parties where they made tiny cakes using 100-watt light bulbs as heat sources. The oven came in turquoise, yellow, or avocado green, matching 1970s kitchen aesthetics, with miniature pans, mixing bowls, and spatulas. Poor girls watched commercials showing perfect tiny cakes, but never tasted them. The refill economics made Easy Bake ownership a long-term luxury. One oven plus 10 refill boxes cost $44.99, an equivalent to $225 today. Rich families bought refills every month. Poor families couldn't afford the initial purchase. If a classmate brought Easy Bake cookies to school, everyone knew her family had disposable income for toy food supplies. Star Wars figures at $1.99 each, Atari consoles at $179.95, Big Wheels at $24.99, Evel Knievel sets at $40 plus total, Easy Bake ovens with endless refills, 5 Wishbook items that separated rich kids from everyone else. 20 more luxury toys remain. Supercharger set, Hot Wheels, Supercharger set appeared in 1970s, Sears Wishbooks, for $19.99, featuring motorized track boosters, loop-the-loops, and dozens of tiny die-cast cars. Rich kids owned track sets that filled entire basement floors, curves, jumps, crashes, while poor kids owned maybe 3 loose Hot Wheels cars without tracks. The supercharger battery-powered booster accelerated cars through loops at high speed, creating racing spectacles. Additional track packs cost $4.99 to $9.99 each, and collector cars ran 99 cents per vehicle, but building elaborate tracks required buying multiple expansion sets, totaling $50 plus. Rich families bought new track pieces every birthday and Christmas. Poor kids played with single cars on bedroom floors. Owning a supercharger set meant birthday parties where neighborhood kids brought their cars to race on your track. It announced wealth, parents willing to spend $20 on miniature car infrastructure. The Kenner Millennium Falcon appeared in the 1979 Sears Wishbook for $26.99, making it the single most expensive Star Wars toy and ultimate rich kid possession. The playset measured nearly 2 feet long and featured light-up cockpit, engine sounds, hidden compartments, laser cannons, rotating radar dish, and seating for action figures. Poor kids owned maybe 1 or 2 Star Wars figures. Rich kids owned the Falcon plus full crew at $26.99, equivalent to $115 today. The Falcon cost more than most families' total Christmas budgets. Sears offered layaway plans, but even installment payments strained working-class finances. The 1978 Barbie A-frame Dreamhouse sold through Sears for $39.99, a staggering price when basic dollhouses cost $12.99. Rich girls received the yellow 3-story plastic mansion with working elevator, furniture sets, patio, kitchen appliances, and bedroom accessories. The dreamhouse required assembly. Parents spent hours snapping plastic panels together and demanded additional furniture packs at $5.99 to $9.99 each. Poor girls played with homemade cardboard dollhouses. Rich girls invited friends to dreamhouse tea parties with miniature dishes and beds. At $39.99 plus furniture totaling $60 plus, the complete dreamhouse setup cost more than many families earned weekly. Schwinn 10-speed bicycles appeared in 1970s Sears catalogs for $94.95, an astronomical sum when basic bikes cost $29.99. Rich kids rode Schwinn Varsity or Continental models with drop handlebars, derailleur gears, handbrakes, and lightweight frames, bikes that transformed cycling into sport. Poor kids rode hand-me-down single-speed bikes with coaster brakes and rusty chains. The Schwinn's 10-speed gear system, racing saddle, and chrome fenders announced serious cycling investment. At $94.95, nearly $500 today, a Schwinn cost more than monthly rent in some towns. Parents who bought Schwinns valued fitness, quality, and their children's social status. G.I. Joe with Kung Fu Grip debuted in 1974, Sears Wishbooks for $7.99, but rich kids owned entire Joe collections, vehicles, accessories, uniforms, totaling $50 plus. The Kung Fu Grip innovation let rubber hands grip weapons and ropes, revolutionizing action figures. Poor kids owned maybe one Joe without accessories. Rich kids owned Joe, vehicles, Jeep $14.99, helicopter $19.99, adventure team sets, and footlockers. At $7.99 per figure plus equipment, assembling complete G.I. Joe missions required significant investment. Sears devoted 4 catalog pages to Joe gear on showcasing scuba sets, space capsules, and safari adventures. Rich kids brought Joes with full equipment to show and tell. Poor kids borrowed figures during recess. Owning a Kung Fu Grip Joe with matching accessories announced your family bought complete toy systems, not individual pieces. Star Wars figures, Atari consoles, big wheels, Evel Knievel sets, Easy Bake ovens, Hot Wheels tracks, Millennium Falcons, Barbie dreamhouses, Schwinn 10-speeds, G.I. Joe collections, 10 Wishbook items that proved your family had money when catalogs arrived each November. 15 more luxury toys remain before this generation forgets completely. Rock'em Sock'em robots appeared in 1970s Sears Wishbooks for $9.99, a premium price when basic board games cost $3.99. Rich kids owned the red and blue boxing robots in their bright yellow ring, hosting tournament battles where players frantically pressed buttons to throw punches until one robot's head popped up declaring, "You win!" The game's mechanical simplicity, 2 joystick controllers, spring-loaded heads, plastic ring, created addictive gameplay that lasted minutes per round. Poor kids played Rock'em Sock'em at rich friends' houses, never owning their own set. The price reflected Mark's Toys' quality manufacturing. The robots withstood thousands of punches, the ring never cracked, and the spring mechanisms rarely broke. At $9.99, nearly $50 today, the game cost what many families spent on an entire week's entertainment. The toy became a 1970s cultural icon, appearing in TV commercials during Saturday morning cartoons, but commercials targeted families with disposable income. Lightbrite sold in Sears Wishbooks for $12.99 throughout the 1970s, but the real expense came from replacement pegs and pattern sheets at $2.99 per refill pack. Rich kids owned Lightbrite sets with unlimited colored pegs, creating glowing pictures by pushing translucent plastic pegs through black paper illuminated by an internal light bulb. The magic, watching colored pegs glow against dark backgrounds, captivated children for hours. Poor kids made one picture with included pegs and never got refills. The economics made Lightbrite a sustained luxury. Initial purchase $12.99 plus 6 refill packs at $2.99 each totaled $30.93, equivalent to $155 today. Rich families bought refills every month, letting kids create unlimited glowing art. Poor families couldn't afford ongoing supplies. The toy required constant adult supervision because small pegs posed choking hazards and the internal bulb got hot, meaning rich kids had parental time investment alongside monetary investment. Rich kids left Lightbrites plugged in for days, displaying glowing artwork. Poor kids treasured their single completed picture, never touching pegs again for fear of losing them. The Weebles. Treehouse appeared in 1971, Sears Wishbooks for $12.99, part of Hasbro's Weebles Wobble But They Don't Fall Down toy line that dominated early 1970s Christmas lists. Rich kids owned the Treehouse playset, complete with Weeble family figures, furniture, accessories, and the distinctive egg-shaped characters that self-righted when pushed. The treehouse featured multiple levels, a working elevator, spiral slide, and detailed rooms where Weebles lived their plastic lives. Poor kids owned maybe 1 or 2 loose Weebles without playsets. The treehouse's price reflected elaborate construction. Poor families couldn't justify spending $12.99 on wobbling egg people. The toy's catchphrase, "Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down," became schoolyard shorthand for rich kid toys. The weighted bottom technology fascinated children. No matter how hard you pushed, Weebles returned upright. The treehouse's bright orange and yellow colors decorated rich kids' bedrooms. Poor kids saw it only in catalog pages and TV commercials. Electric football appeared in 1976 Sears Wishbooks for $15.97, featuring vibrating metal playing field, plastic player figurines, and NFL team branding that made it the premium tabletop sports game. The game's genius, combining chance, strategy, and mechanical vibration, created unpredictable outcomes and endless replayability. Poor kids played electric football at rich friends' houses, marveling at the buzzing field and official NFL team colors. At $15.97, nearly $80 today, additional team sets sold for $3.99 each, letting rich kids collect entire league rosters. The vibrating motor required C batteries, sold separately at $1.99, adding hidden costs. The game's realistic team uniforms, Steelers, Cowboys, Raiders, Dolphins, mirrored expensive NFL fan culture. Rich kids positioned players carefully, poor kids watched the vibrating chaos and wished for their own set. Stretch Armstrong debuted in 1976 Sears Wishbooks for $11.99. The revolutionary action figure filled with corn syrup gel that stretched from 15 inches to over 4 feet before snapping back to original form. Rich kids owned Stretch Armstrong, pulling his limbs in grotesque demonstrations of toy engineering, while poor kids watched nervously, knowing one puncture would leak sticky gel everywhere. Then rich kids tested his limits, stretching arms behind backs, tying him in knots, hanging him from doorknobs by one leg. Confident parents would replace him if he broke. Poor kids handled Stretch Armstrong gently during rare opportunities, terrified of damaging expensive property. The figure became a 1970s phenomenon because no other toy offered similar tactile satisfaction. Pulling rubbery limbs engaged primal kid instincts. Sears commercials showed children stretching Armstrong to absurd lengths, but commercials targeted families with $12 to spend on novelty. If a classmate brought Stretch Armstrong to school, every kid wanted turns pulling his arms, and the owner became playground celebrity. Rock, Sock'em robots, Lightbrite, Weebles treehouses, electric football, Stretch Armstrong. 5 more Wishbook luxuries that separated rich kids from everyone else when prices exceeded weekly grocery budgets and ongoing supplies required sustained wealth. 10 more expensive catalog items remain. Simon debuted in 1978, Sears Wishbooks for $24.99, the revolutionary electronic memory game with 4 colored buttons that lit up and played musical tones in increasingly complex sequences that players had to repeat perfectly. Rich kids owned Simon, the UFO-shaped game that represented cutting-edge microchip technology and electronic entertainment's future. At $24.99, over $125 today, Simon cost more than most families spent on Christmas entirely. The game required 9-volt batteries, sold separately at $1.99, adding hidden costs that poor families couldn't sustain. Rich kids played Simon for hours, chasing high scores and memorizing sequences exceeding 20 moves. Poor kids played Simon at rich friends' houses, frustrated when they couldn't practice at home to improve. The toy's electronic nature, 4 colored quadrants, red, blue, yellow, green, that chimed distinct tones, represented 1970s fascination with computers and microprocessors entering consumer products. Milton Bradley marketed Simon as educational, claiming it improved memory and concentration, justifying the premium price to parents who valued learning toys. Texas Instruments. Speak and Spell appeared in 1978, Sears Wishbooks for $49.99, the most expensive educational toy and absolute proof of family wealth. The electronic learning device used revolutionary speech synthesis technology to pronounce words that children spelled using a membrane keyboard, creating the first mainstream consumer product with artificial speech. At $49.99, over $250 today, Speak and Spell cost more than many families' weekly paychecks. Rich kids owned Speak and Spell, practicing spelling words with a robotic voice, while poor kids used pencil and paper. The device required 4 C batteries, sold separately, adding ongoing costs. Parents justified the expense by calling it educational, but only wealthy families could afford $50 learning toys. The Speak and Spell's technology, digital speech synthesis, electronic display, membrane keyboard, represented cutting-edge 1970s innovation, the same technology NASA used. If a classmate brought Speak and Spell to school, teachers praised parental investment in education, while poor kids felt shame over their family's inability to afford electronic learning. The device offered multiple difficulty levels and game modes, providing years of educational entertainment for rich kids who received software cartridges, $12.99 each, adding vocabulary. The Fisher-Price Little People Play Family House appeared in the 1970s, Sears Wishbooks for $9.99, the iconic 2-story dollhouse with chunky wooden peg people, plastic furniture, and accessories that defined preschool play. Rich kids owned the complete Little People universe: house, farm, airport, school, castle. Each playset at $9.99, adding to total investments exceeding $50. The yellow and red house featured working doorbell, garage door, spiral staircase, and furniture that snapped into place. Poor kids owned maybe one Little People figure without playsets. At $9.99, nearly $50 today, on the house cost a full day's wages for working parents. Rich families bought every Fisher-Price playset, creating elaborate Little People cities across playroom floors. The toys' durability, solid plastic construction, wooden figures, simple mechanisms, meant they lasted decades, becoming heirlooms, but initial costs excluded poor families. The chunky wooden people with round heads and cylindrical bodies became 1970s icons, appearing in millions of homes, but only wealthy families collected complete sets. If a toddler brought Little People to daycare, caregivers recognized family wealth through toy quantity and condition. The playsets taught imaginative play. Kids created stories, moved figures between rooms, acted out family scenarios. But storytelling required owning the physical sets. Poor kids played with Little People at daycare or rich friends' houses, inventing stories with borrowed figures they'd never own. Fisher-Price marketed the toys as educational and safe, no sharp edges, non-toxic materials, justifying premium prices. Kenner's SSP racers, supersonic power, appeared in 1970s, Sears Wishbooks for $9.99, the pull-cord-powered racing cars that achieved incredible speeds through gyroscopic flywheels. Rich kids owned multiple SSP cars, plus the smash-up Barbie set, $14.99, where cars crashed at high velocity. The racers worked by pulling a ripcord through internal mechanisms, spinning a weighted flywheel that propelled cars across floors, driveways, and sidewalks at startling speeds. Poor kids owned maybe one SSP car without track sets. At $9.99 per car, nearly $50 today, collecting multiple racers for proper racing required significant investment. Rich kids organized SSP tournaments, racing cars down basement hallways, crashing them intentionally, then asking parents for replacements. The toys' speed, faster than any hand-pushed car, created thrilling demonstrations during show and tell. If a classmate brought SSP racers to school, everyone wanted pulls on the ripcord. The smash-up Barbie featured two cars aimed at each other, pull cords activated simultaneously, vehicles colliding at center in spectacular crashes. Super Pong appeared in 1976 Sears Wishbooks for $98.95. The deluxe video game console featuring 4 Pong variations when basic Pong 4 cost $64.95. Rich families owned Super Pong, the cutting-edge electronic entertainment that connected to television sets and delivered hours of paddle and ball gameplay. At $98.95, nearly $500 today, Super Pong represented extreme luxury, more expensive than monthly rent in many towns. The console featured 4 game modes: Pong, Basic, Catch, Ball Speeds Up, Handicap, Asymmetric Paddles, and Practice, Solo Mode. Rich kids hosted neighborhood Pong tournaments, plugging the console into family color TVs while poor kids watched from couches, waiting for turns that rarely came. Simon, Speak and Spell, Little People houses, SSP racers, Super Pong, 5 more catalog luxuries where prices exceeded $10 to $100. Separating rich families who bought electronic toys from poor families who couldn't afford batteries. 5 final Wishbook items remain before this memory disappears. The Viewmaster appeared in 1970s Sears Wishbooks for $4.99, with individual reel packs selling for $1.49 to $2.99 each, creating a deceptively expensive toy system that rich kids collected endlessly, while poor kids owned maybe one viewer and 3 reels total. The red plastic stereoscopic viewer, shaped like binoculars with a white lever advancing slides, transported children into 3D photographic worlds featuring Disney characters, National Geographic animals, Star Wars scenes, and tourist destinations. Rich kids owned Viewmasters with dozens of reel sets stored in special cases, creating personal libraries of visual entertainment. Poor kids received a Viewmaster for one Christmas with the 3 reels included in the basic package and never got refilled. The economics made Viewmaster ownership a class marker at $4.99 for the viewer, plus $2.99 per 3-reel set. Collecting 20 reel packs totaled $64.79, over $325 today. Rich families bought new reels monthly. Whenever kids visited Sears, they selected new Viewmaster reels from spinning display racks near checkout counters. Poor families explained that the existing reels were enough, and children should be grateful for what they had. The Viewmaster's genius lay in its stereoscopic technology. Each reel contained 14 film transparencies, 7 stereo image pairs, that created stunning 3D depth when viewed through the device's dual lenses. Children clicked the white lever, watching images advance, feeling transported into Disneyland, African safaris, or Star Wars Death Star battles. Rich kids treated Viewmaster reels casually, leaving them scattered across bedroom floors, occasionally losing or breaking them without consequence because parents bought replacement. Poor kids guarded their 3 reels carefully, returning them to the original packaging after each viewing, knowing these were irreplaceable treasures. If a classmate brought a Viewmaster to school with rare reels like Star Wars or the Muppets, everyone wanted turns, and ownership announced family wealth through real quantity. Rich kids said, "I have the Star Wars set at home, plus the Disney set, plus the Grand Canyon set." Casual mentions of collections poor kids envied. The reels themselves became status symbols. Certain rare Disney or movie-licensed reels cost $3.99. Etch A Sketch appeared in 1970s. Sears Wishbooks for $4.99. The iconic red rectangular drawing toy with 2 white knobs controlling a horizontal and vertical stylus that etched lines through aluminum powder coating on glass, creating intricate drawings erasable with a single shake. At $4.99, about $25 today, Etch A Sketch seemed affordable compared to $50 electronic toys, but it represented a category of premium basic toy that rich families bought without hesitation, while poor families debated whether $5 could be better spent on necessity. Rich kids owned Etch A Sketches, mastering the 2-knob coordination required to draw circles, stairs, and elaborate pictures, hosting competitions to see who could create the most complex designs before shaking them away. Poor kids played with Etch A Sketch at daycare or rich friends' houses, frustrated by the learning curve, aware they wouldn't get practice time at home to develop skill. The toy's brilliance lay in its analog simplicity. No batteries, no replacement parts, infinite reusability. But that simplicity didn't overcome the $4.99 barrier for families counting every dollar. Ohio Art Company marketed Etch A Sketch as educational, claiming it developed hand-eye coordination and spatial reasoning, justifications that convinced wealthy parents to buy while poor parents prioritized food. The red plastic frame, glass screen, white knobs, and silver drawing surface became 1970s design icons, appearing in millions of homes, but ownership divided along class lines, invisible to rich kids who assumed everyone had one. If a classmate brought an Etch A Sketch to school, the teacher often confiscated it because students spent entire lessons creating drawings instead of paying attention. But that casual rule-breaking indicated family wealth. Only rich kids risked expensive toys at school. Poor kids knew better than to bring rare possessions into environments where theft or damage could occur. The toys' durability meant Etch A Sketches lasted decades. Rich kids who owned them in 1975 still had functioning units in 1985. But poor kids never started that decade-long ownership journey. Etch A Sketch created an interesting wealth paradox. Spirograph appeared in 1970's Sears Wishbooks for $6.99. The geometric drawing toy with plastic gears, rings, and colored pens that created intricate mathematical patterns called hypotrochoid and epitrochoid, terms children didn't know but understood as cool spinning design. Rich kids owned Spirograph sets with complete gear collections, creating elaborate multicolored patterns on poster boards they displayed like professional art. Poor kids borrowed Spirograph at school during indoor recess, struggling to keep plastic gears stable while tracing pen through holes, producing wobbly lines instead of perfect curves. At $6.99, about $35 today, Spirograph cost more than basic toy budgets allowed, especially considering its refill economic. The set included 5 pens, but replacement pen packs cost $1.99, and serious Spirograph artists needed fresh pens monthly because cheap ballpoint ink ran dry quickly when tracing hundreds of circles. Kenner marketed Spirograph as educational STEM toy decades before. STEM existed as terminology, claiming it taught geometry, mathematics, and artistic principles, justifications that convinced wealthy parents to buy, while poor parents saw expensive plastic rings that drew circles. The toy's complexity created a skill divide. Rich kids who owned Spirograph practiced for hours, mastering techniques for layering colors and stabilizing gears, while poor kids got one attempt during borrowed time and produced amateur results. If a classmate brought elaborate Spirograph artwork to school for art class, teachers praised mathematical precision, while poor kids felt inadequate comparing their pencil drawings to geometric perfection. The Spirograph set contained multiple gear sizes, 24-tooth, 30-tooth, 40-tooth rings, each producing different pattern size, but complete pattern mastery required owning all gears and experimenting through trial and error, a luxury of time and materials poor kids couldn't afford. Rich kids filled notebooks with Spirograph designs. Poor kids treasured a single completed pattern. Operation appeared in 1970's Sears Wishbooks for $5.99. Milton Bradley's iconic battery-powered surgery game where players used metal tweezers to remove plastic ailments, breadbasket, broken heart, funny bone, Charlie horse, from Cavity Sam's cartoon body without touching metal edges that triggered a buzzer and lit up his red nose. Rich kids owned Operation, hosting game nights where everyone took turns performing surgery while poor kids played at neighbors' houses, nervous about the buzzer's loud noise and flashing light announcing their failure. At $5.99, about $30 today, plus required AA batteries, $1.99 per pack. Operation cost nearly $8 total, more than poor families spent on weekly entertainment. The game's combination of steady-hand skill testing and silly medical humor, ailments named water on the knee, writer's cramp, butterflies in stomach, created addictive gameplay that kept rich kids engaged for hours. The game's educational veneer, teaching anatomy terms and hand-eye coordination, justified purchases to wealthy parents who valued learning toys, but poor parents saw an expensive buzzer game that required batteries. If a classmate mentioned playing Operation at birthday parties, everyone knew their family hosted parties with multiple games and activities. Poor kids attended parties where Operation appeared on game tables and experienced the frustration of public buzzer humiliation. The entire room hearing when you failed surgery, then went home home to houses without electronic games. Operation's design brilliance lay in its difficulty. The metal edges touching the tweezers required genuinely steady hands, creating legitimate challenge even for adults, meaning the game never became boring through mastery. Rich kids played Operation repeatedly, developing surgical precision through practice. Poor kids got occasional turns during playdates, never developing skills through repetition. The game's 13 ailment pieces, each fitting into specific body cavities, meant losing one piece, and rich kids lost pieces constantly, reduced gameplay, but rich families simply ordered replacement parts through Sears for $2.99. Play-Doh Fun Factory appeared in 1970s, Sears Wishbooks for $3.99, the plastic extruder press, with shape dies that squeezed modeling compound into stars, circles, squares, and ribbons, creating sculptable shapes children assembled into creative projects. At $3.99, about $20 today, the Fun Factory seemed affordable compared to $50 electronic toys, but Play-Doh's refill economics made it a sustained luxury. Each 4-pack of compound cans cost $2.49, and serious Play-Doh artists consumed multiple packs weekly, totaling $10 plus monthly in supplies. Rich kids owned fun factories with unlimited Play-Doh supplies, creating elaborate sculptures, mixing colors freely, leaving compound to dry and harden without concern because parents bought replacements. Poor kids received fun factories for birthdays with the 4 included cans and strict instructions to never mix colors, never let compound dry out, always return it to containers. Rules designed to extend supplies indefinitely because there would be no refills. The Fun Factory's genius lay in its mechanical simplicity. Children loaded compound into a cylindrical chamber, chose a shaping die, and pressed a handle that extruded Play-Doh through the die's pattern, creating satisfying sculptable shapes. Rich kids experimented with every die, mixed colors to create custom shades, and treated Play-Doh as infinite resource. Poor kids used each color separately, carefully returned compound to containers, and made 4 cans last months through strict conservation. If a classmate brought Play-Doh creations to school, elaborate multicolored sculptures impossible to create with limited supplies, everyone recognized unlimited access to refills. Kenner marketed Play-Doh as educational, claiming it developed fine motor skills and creative thinking, but the educational benefits required sustained access to fresh compound. Dried-out Play-Doh became crumbly and unusable, negating educational value. Rich families threw out dried compound and opened new cans. Poor families added water to dried compound, kneading it back to usability, creating sticky, inferior product that stained clothes. The ability to waste Play-Doh, letting colors mix permanently, leaving sculptures to harden into useless decorations, indicated disposable wealth. The Fun Factory's refill trap particularly hurt poor families. The $3.99 initial purchase seemed manageable, but ongoing $2.49 compound packs created monthly expenses that revealed true cost. Rich kids' Play-Doh collections filled drawers with dozens of cans in every color. Poor kids' 4 original cans lasted years through careful rationing. Teachers recognized which students had unlimited Play-Doh access by sculpture complexity and color variety during art class. Elaborate multicolored projects indicated wealth. Single-color simple projects indicated poverty. Play-Doh represented the cruelest economic lesson. Toys, with ongoing supply costs, separated rich kids who consumed freely from poor kids who conserved desperately. Football appeared in 1970s, Sears Wishbooks for $3.99, Parker Brothers' revolutionary foam ball that promised, "You can't hurt what you hit," and transformed indoor play. But even at under $4, rich kids owned multiple Nerf balls in every size, while poor kids shared one foam football among entire neighborhoods. The original orange Nerf ball launched in 1970, followed by the football shape in 1972, both made from patented polyurethane foam that compressed on impact, allowing children to throw footballs inside houses without breaking lamps or windows. Rich kids owned Nerf footballs, basketballs, soccer balls, and baseballs, creating complete indoor sports equipment collections totaling $15 plus. Poor kids borrowed Nerf balls during recess, never owning foam sports equipment at home. At $3.99, about $20 today, the Nerf football seemed affordable, but poor families couldn't justify spending $4 on foam when real footballs cost the same and served legitimate outdoor sports purposes. Rich families bought Nerf products specifically for indoor entertainment, acknowledging children needed activity options during winter or rainy days. And the Nerf football's genius lay in its flight characteristics. The foam aerodynamics created surprisingly accurate spirals, making it feel like throwing real footballs without the weight or injury risk. Rich kids practiced quarterbacking skills indoors year-round. Poor kids played outside regardless of weather because indoor play space and breakable household items made indoor sports impossible. If a classmate brought a Nerf football to gym class on rainy days, everyone wanted throws, and ownership indicated family wealth through redundant sports equipment, owning both real and foam versions of the same ball. The Nerf brand expanded rapidly throughout the 1970s, introducing new products annually, and rich kids collected entire Nerf arsenals while poor kids watched commercials showing impossible-to-afford foam toy collections. Parker Brothers marketed Nerf as safe alternative to dangerous toys, but safe meant expendable. Rich kids left Nerf balls outside overnight, forgot them at friends' houses, lost them under porches, then asked parents for replacements. Poor kids who borrowed Nerf balls returned them carefully, knowing they'd never own their own. The foam degraded over time. Sunlight made it brittle, moisture caused crumbling, dog bites tore chunks away. Toss Across appeared in 1970s Sears Wishbooks for $7.99. Ideal Toy Company's tic-tac-toe beanbag game, where players threw beanbags at a vertical target board with 9 flip panels marked X or O, attempting to get 3 in a row. Rich kids owned Toss Across, setting up tournament games in basements and backyards, while poor kids played at daycare or community centers, aware they'd never have backyard game equipment at home. At $7.99, about $40 today, Toss Across cost more than most family board games, and its outdoor/indoor versatility meant rich families justified the purchase as multi-purpose entertainment. Poor families couldn't afford $8 beanbag games when grocery budgets ran tight. The game's combination of skill, throwing accuracy, luck, panels flipped randomly upon impact, and strategy, tic-tac-toe tactics, created addictive gameplay that kept rich kids engaged during summer afternoons. Poor kids watched neighborhood toss-across games from sidewalks, occasionally invited to throw beanbags, then walking home to houses without backyard games. The toss-across board, a 3x3 grid of spring-loaded flip panels on a collapsible stand, represented premium outdoor toy manufacturing, durable plastic, precise spring mechanisms, weather-resistant construction, and included beanbags. Rich kids left Toss Across set up in yards for weeks, Poor kids' families couldn't afford items that required permanent outdoor space. If a classmate mentioned playing toss across at birthday parties, everyone knew their family hosted elaborate outdoor celebrations with multiple activity stations. The game appeared in Sears Wishbook outdoor toy sections alongside croquet sets, badminton nets, and horseshoe sets, a collection of backyard entertainment items that together totaled $40 plus and announced substantial property where children played. Poor kids lived in apartments or rental houses with no yards for permanent game setup. Toss across required space, storage, and spending capacity poor families lacked. The beanbags wore out through heavy use. Seams split, beans spilled, but rich families ordered replacement beanbag sets through Sears for $2.99. Poor families couldn't afford the base game, much less replacement components. The game's outdoor nature meant weather exposure degraded materials, sun-faded plastic, rain-rusted springs, winter freeze-thaw cycles cracked panels. The Snoopy snow cone machine appeared in 1970s, Sears Wishbooks for $9.99, Hasbro's hand crank ice shaver, shaped like Peanuts' character Snoopy in his doghouse, that let children make frozen treats by grinding ice cubes and adding flavored syrups. Rich kids owned snow cone machines, hosting summer parties where they served homemade snow cones to neighborhood friends, while poor kids watched, occasionally receiving one melting treat before walking home to houses without novelty appliances. At $9.99, about $50 today, plus required flavor syrup refills at $1.99 per bottle. The snow cone machine represented sustained luxury. Initial purchase plus ongoing supplies totaled $20 plus for a summer's worth of frozen treats. Rich families bought new syrup bottles monthly in cherry, some grape, orange, and blue raspberry flavors. Poor families couldn't afford the machine itself, much less flavored syrups. The machine's operation required manual labor. Children hand-cranked the grinding mechanism, crushing ice cubes into snow that fell into Snoopy's doghouse dish, then added syrup. But the effort felt magical because it produced store-quality snow cones at home. Rich kids operated snow cone machines casually, making treats impulsively on hot afternoons, wasting half-made cones, spilling syrup, leaving sticky residue on counters that parents cleaned without complaint. Poor kids received one carefully made snow cone during rare visits to rich friends' houses, savoring every icy bite, knowing they wouldn't taste another until next summer. If a classmate brought snow cone machine treats to school for birthday celebrations, everyone knew their family owned kitchen novelty appliances beyond necessities. The machine required supplementary materials, ice cube trays, rich families had automatic ice makers, paper cone cups, $1.49 per pack of 20, and counter space for operation. Poor families lacked automatic ice, didn't buy disposable paper products, and couldn't spare counter space for toys. The snow cone machine also created mess. Ice chips flew during grinding, syrup dripped, melting cones left puddles, mess that rich families tolerated as childhood fun, while poor families avoided because cleaning supplies and wasted ingredients cost money. Electronic Battleship appeared in late 1970s, Sears Wishbooks for $19.99. Milton Bradley's battery-powered naval warfare game where players called coordinates to sink opponents' ships with electronic sounds and lights indicating hits, misses, and sinking vessels. Rich kids owned Electronic Battleship, the premium version of the classic board game that added technological sophistication through sound effects and automated scoring. At $19.99, about $100 today, plus required C batteries, $1.99 per pack. Electronic Battleship cost nearly $22 total, an extravagant sum when traditional Battleship board games sold for $5.99. Poor kids played classic paper and pencil Battleship using graph paper. Rich kids played electronic versions with dramatic explosion sounds and flashing lights. The electronic enhancement didn't change core gameplay. Both versions involved guessing grid coordinates, but the sound effects and lights transformed simple strategy into dramatic naval combat experience that justified quadruple pricing to wealthy parents who valued technological toys. If classmates discussed playing electronic Battleship at sleepovers, everyone knew their families owned multiple electronic games and hosted elaborate overnight parties. Poor kids attended sleepovers rarely, and when they did, hosts owned standard board games, not $20 electronic versions. The game's battery requirements created ongoing costs that separated rich owners from poor observers. C batteries powered the electronics for approximately 15 to 20 games before dying, requiring constant replacement. Rich families maintained battery stockpiles, and poor families couldn't justify buying batteries for entertainment. Electronic Battleship represented peak 1970s electronic game integration, taking a proven analog game and adding battery-powered features that increased cost without fundamentally improving gameplay. Marketing emphasized technological advancement, now with real battle sounds, convincing wealthy parents that electronic versions surpassed traditional games. Poor parents recognized the price difference as paying $14 extra for unnecessary sound effects. The game's size, two large plastic consoles with peg grids and ship pieces, required significant storage space and careful component management. Rich kids left electronic Battleship set up on game room tables for weeks. Poor kids played space-efficient paper versions in cramped apartments. If game pieces got lost, and rich kids lost pieces constantly, replacement part orders through Sears cost $3.99. Poor families couldn't afford the base game, much less replacement components for games they didn't own. Baby Alive debuted in 1973. Sears Wishbooks for $16.99. Kenner's revolutionary doll that ate food packets, drank from bottles, and required diaper changes after digesting, creating the most realistic and expensive baby doll available. Rich girls owned Baby Alive with unlimited food packet refills at $2.99 per pack, practicing motherhood through elaborate feeding and changing routines, while poor girls played with basic dolls that required imagination instead of proprietary supplies. At $16.99, about $85 today, plus ongoing food packets, diapers, and batteries, maintaining Baby Alive cost $30 plus annually, more than poor families spent on all Christmas gifts combined. The doll's complexity required AA batteries powering the internal mechanism that moved food through her system, creating realistic baby care that included mixing powder packets with water, spoon-feeding the mixture, waiting for digestion, then changing soiled diapers. Rich girls treated Baby Alive casually, sometimes forgetting to change diapers, letting food mixture harden inside the doll's mechanism, then asking parents to buy replacement dolls. Poor girls watched Baby Alive demonstrations at rich friends' houses, amazed by mechanical digestion, aware they'd never owned dolls, requiring ongoing expensive supplies. If a classmate brought Baby Alive to show and tell, the teacher needed to establish rules because the doll's feeding process created mess, spilled food mixture, wet diapers, and the distinctive smell of the banana-flavored food packets. Only rich girls brought toys requiring supplies and cleanup to school. Poor girls knew better than to risk their few precious possessions. Baby Alive's refill economics created particularly cruel class divisions. The $16.99 purchase seemed like a one-time expense until parents realized each food packet lasted one feeding, a six-pack cost $2.99, and active play consumed multiple packs weekly. Rich families bought food packets in bulk. Poor families couldn't afford the doll itself. The required accessories, diapers, sold separately, $3.99 for a pack of 10, bottles, bibs, spoons, added $10 plus to initial costs, and replacement diapers became ongoing expenses. Rich girls' Baby Alive dolls wore color-coordinated outfits with matching accessories. Poor girls' basic baby dolls wore homemade clothes. Kenner marketed Baby Alive as educational toy-teaching childcare responsibility, but that education required sustained financial investment in supplies.